This video is going to go over license capacity checks by age range. My food program has two different methods for conducting license capacity checks. One of those is by defining age ranges, and the other is by defining license types. So this video is going to go through how to configure your site and your sponsorship so that the age ranges are defined, and then we check license capacity against that. But here's the difference between those two methods. So in both cases, we are going to check the license capacity of each meal and snack. If the combination of children checked in or participants checked in for a meal are within the license capacity, that's great. It goes through. If it exceeds, if the combination of children checked in for a meal or snack exceeds that license capacity, then we are going to disallow meals as a result. Both cases can accommodate shifts. That's where you've got a group of children that come and eat a meal, they leave, and then another group of children come and eat that same meal. We can also accommodate if you have 5 and 6-year-olds that need to be counted in a licensing group based on whether or not they're enrolled in school. So you have a 5-year-old, and you say, well, if they're going to go to kindergarten in the fall, they're in group 1, and if they are not going to kindergarten, they're in group 2. We have a special flag that you can designate on a participant and let us know which of those groups to count them in. There are some limitations to license capacity by age ranges, so it is a little bit more simple than the license capacity checks by license type. So we can't have age ranges that overlap when we have license capacity by age range, and the reason for that is because then we wouldn't know which group to put them in. The one exception is the one I just mentioned about whether or not they're enrolled in school, but otherwise we wouldn't have any idea which group to put them in. And then the other thing is that we can't have multiple scenarios under license capacity by age ranges. So if you're licensed for 10 infants, then you're licensed for 10 infants. There's nothing that we can do where we can check, well, if you had only 8 infants, but then you had more children that were school age or preschoolers, then you're allowed to have a different number of infants. That's too complicated for the license capacity checks by age range. In that case, you would want to go and look at license capacity checks by license type. All right, so let me show you how license capacity by age range is configured. We're going to go over into the system. And the first place you need to go is into setup, and then into sponsor setup. So this is where you tell us whether you want to do license capacity checks by license type or by age range. So in this case, we're going to select age range. Click Save. And now when we go up into licensing, it's going to ask you what your age ranges are. And then this is going to let you know if it's a school age range or not. So again, the only time in which you can have overlapping age ranges with this license capacity method is if one of them is a school age and one is not. So I'm going to add in one called infants. And we'll say that that starts at 6 weeks and it goes up until 15 months. Right, and then we're going to add one for toddlers, and let's say that our state defines toddlers as 16 months up until the day they turn 3. And then we're going to do preschool. And we could have preschoolers starting at age 3 and going all the way up until they turn 6. And this is where we're going to have school age range, and we're going to say, nope, these are the preschoolers, so we're not concerned about them being in school. And then we'll add a school age range, and the earliest that can be is 5 years old. And then they can have kids in care right up until they turn 13. And we're going to designate this as a school age range. Again, you only have to do this if you've got age ranges that overlap, and one is for school age children and the other is for non-school age children, and you've got kids in the middle, and you have to tell us which group they belong in. So we're going to click Save on that. And then I'm going to go into the site and show you how to put in those license capacities. All right, so to set your license capacities, you go into site details, and then we scroll down here to site licensing. So here's where we add a license. And right here are the licensing age ranges that you define. So you tell us how many infants can you have, how many preschoolers, how many school agers, and how many toddlers. So I'm going to say that we can have 5 infants, and we can have 8 toddlers, and we can have 10 preschoolers, and we can have 15 school agers. Okay, so this would be the absolute limit. So what it'll do is it'll check and see every time you've checked in a group for a meal or snack, it'll make sure that you don't exceed any of these limits. We do have one extra check you can do, and that's when you can have different age range combinations. So this is saying, okay, you can have 5 infants, 8 toddlers, 10 preschoolers, 15 school agers, but overall, you can't have more than 20 kids. That would be an example. Or you'd say, well, you can't have a combination of more than 6 infants and toddlers combined. So to add an age range combination, just click on Manage Age Range Combinations, and you say, okay, which age ranges are we talking about? Let's say that it's all. So we want a head count number, and we're going to say it's not going to exceed 20. So in this case, the meal validator will check both of these things. So it'll check that you don't have more than 5 infants, 8 toddlers, and so on. It will also check that not more than 20 children of all age ranges are checked in. All right, so we're going to click Save on that. And then I just want to show you quickly the participant flag. So here is the Include in School Age License Capacity. If you check that, then the participant will be included in the school age group. If it is not checked, then they will be included in the non-school age group.